Before I actually start jumping into the topic, there we go. I want to briefly give a shout out to Funding the Commons, because Funding the Commons and Hypercerts have been basically a partner since day one, actually since day zero, because the Hypercerts project was started at a meeting in New York after Davidat gave one of the major talks about Hypercerts at Funding the Commons in 2022, so a couple of years back already. And then also to the residencies, you see some pictures from the recent residency just north from Buenos Aires, and shout out to Ken, Shafi, and Adam for doing amazing work there, and also besides just residencies. And a lot of the stuff that I'm presenting today is actually based on the work that happened in the residencies. So let's get started with the topic. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here when I kind of give the framing on why we actually built Hypercert and why we think that collective value is not valued and provided enough in our society. But for everybody who is not familiar with the public goods and commons space, our economic system basically is blind on that eye, because it just aggregates individual preferences and willingnesses to pay into prices, supply and demand, and that's really powerful, but that's not powerful for public goods and common goods, just for private goods. What I mean with that is basically everything from digital public goods to regenerative land projects, research and development in the Valley of Death, investigative journalism, community organizing, and so many other things that actually make life kind of worth living, I believe. Of course, we have policy systems that are also intended to solve this, but they were just not built for a complex world at the pace that we are experiencing right now. So that's, wow, that slide looked different. What this slide actually said is, I believe we can do much better. And if you're interested in the Pareto-topian concept from Eric Drexler, just Google it. It's an interesting concept. Cool. So I believe we can do much better, and I believe that because we have now the technology to actually coordinate among ourselves of what we actually value together and then make it happen. And this is kind of like what a lot of Funding the Commons is about. So what's next? So now I basically want to merge kind of our work on Hypercerts also with a new technology that we are using at Proto, the decentralized social media protocol that Bluesky is built on, but it's much more flexible, and it's an exciting stack to add to kind of the blockchain stack that we have been using before, because it adds much more flexibility in organizing the data that we need to also close kind of the evaluation loop that many speakers before have kind of criticized that we don't have it and that we need it. Cool. So we actually call this kind of value recognition networks, and networks because in the network, that's where the knowledge is. We have to actually identify who are the players for a given set of problems that know really what is kind of the value that this provided. That can be on the ground communities, that can be experts in open source software, or that can be AI algorithms that know it better in some cases than the traditional evaluation mechanisms. So Hypercerts serves the function of anchoring this discussion in a digital artifact that can look like this, can also look differently, but it really just describes the work, if that is in open source software, in events, or in the environmental space. And for the comparison with kind of social media, when you think of a post with replies and likes, you can also think about an impact claim that is as easy as making a post. So now you're making an impact claim of who did what, when, and where. That can be going in the past, can go into the future. And then we can add measurements, evidence, and verification of that evidence. And of course, what's important is also who says that this is a measurement. Can we trust that person? So we actually want to have kind of a social graph. Who do I trust to make the evidence, to make the impact claims? And then, interestingly, we can also combine all of this into evaluations about the impact claim, so that this kind of post about what you did actually becomes something that is valuable in itself. So we want to make impact claims and evaluations as simple as posting on social media, which of course doesn't mean that evaluations, everything, the work that is behind it is easy, but it should be that easy to actually bring that and make a public statement about it. This is a little bit the infrastructure that we are now using, that most of this is already provided by @Proto. So we start at the left with kind of lexicons that, in the case of social media, define what is a post, what is a like, what is a reply. In our case, it is what is an impact claim, what is a measurement, what is an evaluation. So then the second step is that data is stored on a personal data server. That can be a server from Bluesky, can be a server from the Hypercerts Foundation, or it can be self-hosted by the user. So by the project, by the evaluator. So it's your data if you want to take on the burden of self-hosting, but you can also use kind of the Hypercerts Foundation as a hosting provider. Then it gets aggregated, and then when it gets aggregated, actually multiple different platforms can use it. So here it can be used by MaEarth, can be used by Gainforest, can be used by your own project where you raise directly on your project's website. Okay, so, and this is the nice thing that the projects then can, independent of the platforms, have their data according to that schema and raise funds according to different funding mechanisms, because not one funding mechanism is kind of the right thing, because like a land project and an open source project, they need really different funding mechanisms. And that's why kind of this infrastructure still works for all the different types of funding mechanisms, which we are not building, but we are working with the projects that are building the funding mechanisms on top of this infrastructure. So then extending this, in some cases, we want to have more economic security around like the claims and the data. So then we can anchor the data on chain, or we can tokenize the impact claim, which allows you to sell your impact to funders. And it allows funders to actually not only say, I funded a project with $100, but you can actually say, my $100 actually funded 1% of this activity, and this activity was evaluated as having the impact of X. So we are actually moving away from just like input measurement to actually claiming what you funded and the impact of it. So ultimately, this is a shift away from data silos towards user-controlled data. The donation receipts are replaced with proof of funded activities and outcomes. We don't have just one centralized impact evaluator. We actually have many different evaluators with different approaches, which is also great in order to incentivize kind of the right and robust evaluations. So this could be that if we have already like three evaluations that go into one direction, and the fourth evaluation just says exactly the same thing, that's not very informative. But if the fourth evaluation is actually saying something else and turns out that it's right, so that the project, for example, didn't actually have the impact that it claimed, then it can be a very informative evaluation, and we can incentivize exactly those kinds of evaluations. Yeah, I already said that we need many different funding mechanisms, and what we really want to enable is verified data and trust-based funding. Cool. So the second to last point here is when we actually look at the grants applications today, everybody uses AI to fill out the grants application today, but in the future, this will be even further automated. So you will just have your AI funding agent who runs out into the world and looks for funding, applies automatically, and you might just press a button to confirm. On the other hand, the funders will actually also get a lot of different applications, and they use AI to sort it, to select it, and ultimately it's just AI agents talking to each other. This leads to a kind of hopeful case, because what it means is that everybody has a beautiful narrative, and nobody cares about the narrative anymore, because it doesn't distinguish you from other projects. What could happen then is ultimately the best thing for somebody fundraising is actually doing the work and allowing the right evaluation of it, so you have verified data that you can plug into your AI funding agent, who then goes out and does all the work that you didn't want to do before because you actually just wanted to build open source software or take care of land or organize a community event. And then the topic of the evaluation function we had already before. I think this needs to work in a really fast decision loop, but we need to add then slower feedback loops that evaluate how we made the decisions. So if we just make decisions based on satellite imagery and community input on how to distribute funds to regenerative land projects, then we want to evaluate if those are actually good metrics to use, or if we should add others like bioacoustics or local NGOs that verify that the projects were actually doing impactful work. I think I'm running out of time a little bit, but this is probably the biggest question that I'm getting. Who will actually buy Hypercerts? And there are kind of in all impact domains, at least these 4 types. So basically people and organizations that just want to fund impact directly, people who need to demonstrate that they had impact, communities that actually coordinate in order to fund together, and then also local and national governments that want to prove that they use the public funds effectively. So, and in different impact domains, this will look differently. And a lot of people are saying to this, like, that's not realistic. But I think we need to push all of us towards actually aligning in order to fund these public goods together. And we can use new mechanisms to do so. I skip over this. So to just tell you also what we are very concretely doing, because I came in from kind of the high-level introduction. Right now we're working with Earth and Gainforest. These are 2 projects that want to fund regenerative land projects, and they are building on top of Hypercerts. And this is kind of the focus on making the protocol work. Let the protocol work for them, and then we can also expand to other projects. Research is currently looking at Hypercerts for Science. Funding the Commons is experimenting with it for events, and then FabDAO is doing project financing in Taiwan with it, but there are also many others. And you can also build your own platform on top of Hypercerts to build new funding mechanisms, because in the combination of AdProto and kind of the blockchain elements that we retain, it is extremely easy for you to build. So the roadmap is that we will release kind of the new SDK with the AdProto integration, and then hope to have kind of the examples ready in the beginning of 2026. And if you are interested in just like seeing what we are building, scan the QR code. This is a link to our announcement channel on Telegram, where we have linked kind of to the GitHub stuff, to another article where you can see what is kind of what's happening in the Hypercerts world. And then, yeah, get in contact, reach out. There are a bunch of people here, also in the audience, Adam, Ken, and Shafi. Feel free to talk to us, what you can do with this. Yeah, and I will be around as well. Thank you.